Hi, today I'm going to do a tutorial about how I draw stylized eyes using Clip Studio Paint, the same type of eyes I've used in my recent artwork such as this one and multiple other artworks. I'll be going over the general shapes and anatomy of the eyes, the different type of eye shapes and the personality they project, and how to construct the eye in perspective, painting and rendering the eyes using Clip Studio Paint, and other small tips along the way. The structure of the eyes. Eyes are constructed from multiple forms built on top of each other. To simplify, you have the big white sphere called the sclera. On top of it sits the iris, the colored circular part that surrounds our pupil, a small dark circle we need for eyesight. The pupil and the iris are concave to the inside of the sclera. Wrapping them all together over the iris as a transparent protective shell is the cornea, which is convex from the sclera, and is also the part that reflects the highlights. It's important to remember the shape of the eye because when you start moving the eyes around, you can see how the pupil becomes thinner as we move to the side view, and the cornea becomes visible. Ending in the skin around the eye, we have the tear duct. The shape of the tear duct tends to change based on the character's ethnicity. However, a good rule of thumb is to make it shaped similar to a smooth-edged triangle. Also, keep in mind that the eyelids cast a shadow over the eye, and since there is shadow there, we can't really have highlights there, so I've moved them around to fit the structure of the skin around the eye. The skin around the sclera covers about a third from both the top and the bottom in a rested position. Changing that ratio can create different expressions, such as opening them wide, revealing more of the eyeball conveys surprise, especially if paired with a raised eyebrow. While hiding more of the sclera, the eye can create a squinting look that can convey anything from suspicion to simply difficulty reading. Ending in the eyelashes, we should keep in mind that there are both eyelashes on the top and the bottom of the eyelid's edge. Men tend to have more sparse and short eyelashes, while women have long and fuller eyelashes. Of course, this is not always the case. On top of our upper eyelid, we also have the crease fold of the eye that depends on the character's ethnicity too. Different crease shapes depend on the character's ancestry, so I'd recommend looking up the corresponding ethnicity to get it right. Eye shapes and their influence. Different characters have different type of eyes. For example, when game developers, movie casters, and 3D modelers create a character design, they tend to give extra thought to the shape of the eye because that is what people tend to focus on the most. And different shape of eyes convey different feelings and emotions about a character, along with their energy or lack thereof. Sharp and angular eye shapes might convey a more perceptive feeling for the character, menacing or perhaps just energized and active. While droopy eyes can convey either a docile, low-energy nature for a character or perhaps innocence, they could also convey an undertone of not caring or being jaded. And round eye shape might convey a more alert yet caring and juvenile look, a young and bubbly personality. Square sharp eyes tend to convey a more down-to-earth and seasoned expression, like a mature reliable man or a stubborn unmoving lady. Of course, pairing any type of eye with a head shape, eyebrow shape, and general tone of the character is essential to achieve the desired expression to convey. Constructing the eyes in perspective. As an artist, it's usually enough for us to know the visual shapes of the eye and its surrounding bones and muscles to create a believable image. The eyeball is an orb that sits within the sockets of our skull, so we only see the visible part of the eye in the front. We don't usually need to bother ourselves with how the entire orb of the eye looks. So we will primarily focus on the planes of the face around the eyes, as we can see the eyes usually concave in as the brow juts out, casting a shadow on our eye socket. From the side view, we can see the eyelids create a V-shaped crease where the eyelids meet because the eyelids cover the eye from all sides. As the eye orb sits within the sockets, it pushes out the skin from the socket, creating a convex plane. The areas of the face covering the eye and its surrounding can be defined as planes facing different directions, where our eyelids face downwards and upwards respectively and then inward towards the fold. You have a slight concave as mentioned before towards the brow, and the same in the opposite direction towards the cheekbones. These planes stay the same regardless of where the head might look and are illuminated according to where the light is from. For example, if we had our light hit from the bottom, we would shade the eyes in such a way that each planes facing towards the bottom are being illuminated and those facing up are shaded. Drawing and painting the eyes. First, I wanted to say that I'll be using these Clip Studio brushes to paint and draw everything that you see me do. A simple hard brush, which will be the G-pen, and then I'll be using a soft brush from the airbrush section, and lastly, a blending brush from the blending section. First step of creating eyes is choosing what type of character we have, where it looks, and whether it's masculine or feminine in features. For this example, I'll be using sharp angular eyes with feminine features. So I'll start by sketching the sclera and then the folds of the skin on top and the eyelashes on the eyelids that are more full because we're drawing feminine features. On top of the upper eyelid, I'll add a crease fold for the eye, which changes the character's ethnicity. And on the layer below, we will start adding paint to our hard brush, choosing the skin color and the color of our sclera, as it is essential to note the sclera isn't white but a desaturated warm gray that usually corresponds to the value of the surrounding skin. And then we merge the layers. We can then start painting the skin surrounding the eyeball, and since the eyeball bulges out, pushes our eyelids forward, creating a shading around it. I like using a soft brush to paint the skin and slowly go over it to blend it in the right places. However, don't be shy to use a hard brush to create sharper shadows and tone shifts. It's usually better to have more sharp edges than soft ones. And I'd recommend going over the planes of the face to understand how to shade each area surrounding the eye, as we mentioned earlier, and how to draw eyes in perspective. And since, like everything, the sclera is a three-dimensional object, it has a shadow cast on it from both the top and the bottom eyelids depending on where the light is in the scene. And keep in mind it has spherical shading as it is not a flat plane facing forward. On a separate layer above the sclera, I'll use a hard brush to create a perfect circle to be used as our iris. We can then use transformation tools to skew to the proper perspective if needed. As light comes from a light source and hits the cornea and iris, it passes through, leaving a highlight on the cornea and shading the area where the light hits the iris. And because the light inside the iris bounces around, it tends to warm the light inside, making the colors more saturated and vibrant. I also like blurring the iris a bit at the edges to give it a more painterly feeling so it doesn't look too perfect or digital. We will lightly shade above our crease fold as it leads up to our eyebrows, which I will draw by first choosing a shape that fits our eye shape, angular and sharp. And then start drawing strands of hair using a hard brush to where the hairs grow from. Personally, I also like using the same color as I did for the eyelashes, which is usually the same color of the hair but a lot darker, to keep a harmony of colors on the canvas, as a bit of eyeshadow color around the crease of the eye. There's also a technique I like to use to boost up the colors a bit and introduce a variation of colors. I add an overlay layer on top, and then I use a dark red and brown below the lower eyelid, near the brow and around the sclera, and I'll mark them to try to make it a bit clearer, to add some contrast and make things a bit more three-dimensional. The reason I do it as a separate layer is because it tends to be easier to paint the forms of the face in a more mid-tone color and then later add some more contrast and variation of color using a separate overlay layer. You can even use that color to go over the iris itself to add a bit more contrast, or use a more vibrant version of the iris color to boost up the vibrancy. I hope this tutorial was helpful and I could get through some of the ways I use to draw eyes on my own illustrations to you, so you can paint the eyes you want to draw. Oh, did you know that your stylus can actually be used as a mouse to tap stuff? Like the subscribe button. I'm so clever. Thank you for watching.